Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we are breaking down a massive challenge in modern manufacturing. We're zeroing in on the complex and honestly sometimes heavily overlapping capabilities of SAP S/4HANA and Impact ECS, specifically within semiconductor manufacturing. If you're the one tasked with building out a cost intelligence layer for a fab, well, you already know exactly how complicated this gets. You've got these highly sophisticated systems, but if they aren't talking to each other the exact right way, you end up with a total data disaster. So let's just dive right in and map out exactly how to build a unified architecture that actually works.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the wall of semiconductor costing, the real truth behind SAP at Impact, our recommended three-tier architecture, system demarcation, and finally, practical operation and governance.
Section 1. The wall of semiconductor costing. Let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat.
So I gotta ask, why is semiconductor costing so uniquely, painfully difficult? Think about it. Why do traditional manufacturing costing models, things like your standard bills of materials and linear routings, why do they completely fall apart the second you apply them to a silicon wafer?
Well, unlike building a car on a nice linear assembly line, a single semiconductor wafer goes through what's called a re-entrant flow. That means the same exact wafer loops back through the very same lithography or etching tools dozens or literally hundreds of times. I mean, how are you supposed to allocate the massive depreciation of a multi-million-dollar machine across different products that are all fighting for that exact same tool? And then add yield and scrap to the mix? In this industry, a 1% drop in yield isn't just a minor operational hiccup, it's a massive financial hit. Plus, long cycle times mean your work in progress, your WIP, is just constantly fluctuating in value. Standard costing simply cannot handle this level of multidimensional complexity on its own.
Moving on to Section 2, the truth about SAP and Impact.
Okay, there is a massive industry misconception that we absolutely need to debunk right now. The myth out there is that you need Impact ECS simply because SAP cannot do costing. That is absolutely not true. S/4HANA actually has incredibly robust costing features. It's got product cost controlling, the material ledger, actual costing, and WIP revaluation. It is fully equipped, out of the box, to be your system of record for accounting costs. The real difference between the two isn't about capability, it's about the level of manufacturing granularity and understanding the specific why behind the costs.
So, that brings us to a crucial question. If both systems, SAP and Impact ECS, are perfectly capable of calculating a standard cost independently, which system is telling the truth? Imagine they both spit out a number, and those numbers don't match because of different yield assumptions or overhead rates. Which system's numbers are you actually going to present to the auditors? This double truth is a complete data governance nightmare, and honestly, it can ruin an entire implementation.
Section 3. The recommended three-tier architecture. To avoid that functional overlap and those dangerous double truths we just talked about, we have to explicitly assign specific roles to specific systems. Think about this framework using a three-role analogy. Up at the top tier, your MES, your manufacturing execution system, is the reporter of facts. It tracks the pure physical reality, like, hey, this lot of wafers went through this step, and we had exactly this much scrap. Then, sitting in the middle, Impact ECS acts as the detective. It takes all those raw facts and models them against yields, drivers, and process rates to explain the actual operational economics. Finally, at the bottom, SAP S/4HANA is the official accountant. It handles the legally binding financial truth, the official standard price, financial WIP, and your general ledger. They aren't competing, they're collaborating.
Section 4. Functional demarcation between systems. So how do we practically draw the lines between these tools? Because let me tell you, the absolute fastest way to derail a project like this is vocabulary overlap. If your operations guys and your finance team are using the exact same words to mean completely different things, you're in big trouble. Let's define the SAP vocabulary first. When we say actual cost in SAP, we are specifically talking about the accounting actual cost. This is your official financial and inventory valuation. It relies on the material ledger to roll up variances into a periodic unit price. Simply put, this is the legally binding truth you're handing over to tax authorities and shareholders.
Now, contrast that immediately with Impact ECS. When Impact calculates an actual cost, it is a management actual cost. It doesn't exist to replace the official ledger, not at all. It exists to explain why those costs happened in the first place. It applies specific yield models, it analyzes tool utilization, and it breaks down the business drivers so your plant managers can actually make real-time decisions to improve efficiency.
And you know, the exact same rule applies to work in progress, or WIP. Financial WIP lives securely inside SAP. That's the official valuation booked during your monthly financial close. Operational WIP, on the other hand, lives in Impact. It is incredibly granular, tracking the specific values stranded at a single wafer lot or maybe a specific etching process step, so your process engineers can actually analyze bottlenecks. Keeping that accounting vocabulary totally separate from the operational vocabulary is absolutely crucial.
Here's a great look at how these systems translate each other. SAP is going to give you these high-level accounting variances. For example, SAP might flag an input quantity variance. Well, that's just an accounting term. But Impact acts as your translator, decomposing that variance into actionable business drivers. It tells operations, hey, that input quantity variance, that was actually caused by a specific yield loss on tool B, or a rework loop, or scrapped wafers. It literally turns a financial flag into an operational root cause.
Which brings us to Section 5, Practical Operation and Governance.
So, how do we make sure this highly structured architecture actually holds up in the real world, especially during the notoriously chaotic monthly financial close? Well, their foundational rule of governance here is simple but incredibly strict. Detailed cost models must match the general ledger. You can have the most brilliant, granular, super advanced operational cost model in the world sitting in Impact ECS, but I promise you, if the final total doesn't perfectly reconcile with the SAP General Ledger, your finance department will literally ignore it.
To build and keep that trust, you have to run through highly structured monthly reconciliation gates. Step 1, you freeze and lock the actuals in both MES and SAP. Step 2, you load those locked figures straight into Impact. Step 3, Impact does its magic, applying the operational drivers like yield and scrap. Step 4, and pay attention, because this is the most important one, you run an amount test to ensure Impact's totals perfectly to the penny reconcile with SAP's GL. And finally, Step 5, you run a driver test to bridge the variances, proving that the operational math totally explains the financial total. If you follow these gates, operations and finance stay perfectly aligned, no arguments.
But as with any major integration, there are some huge landmines you need to avoid. Number 1 is creating dual standard costs. We already talked about how that causes terrifying inventory mismatches. Another massive, common mistake is trying to bring all of that raw, super granular MES data straight into SAP. Don't do it. SAP just isn't built for that volume of physical trace data. It'll clog the system. And conversely, whatever you do not try to turn Impact ECS into a transactional ERP. Keep each system strictly in its own lane.
If you can dodge those risks, here is what a successful implementation roadmap looks like. You kick off with Phase 1, a fit-to-standard evaluation of SAP to see exactly what gaps Impact actually needs to fill. Phase 2 is building a proof of concept for just one fab. Start small. Phase 3 is locking down the integrations. And the real payoff? That's Phase 4. Once you have this rock-solid, clean foundation, you can actually start using advanced predictive AI and analytics using SAP Business Technology Platform and SAP Analytics Cloud to run some incredible scenario analyses. But listen to me, you absolutely cannot get to that cool AI phase without doing the foundational plumbing first.
So let's recap the golden rule here. Out of all the complex systems, all the data flows, all the integrations we just explored, there is exactly one number to remember. 1. There must only ever be one official released standard cost across your entire enterprise.
As we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with a direct quote from the source material that really hits the nail on the head. In semiconductor manufacturing, neither ERP, accounting costs alone, nor MES, production records alone, can provide the explanatory power needed for management decisions without a dedicated cost intelligence layer. That right there is exactly why integrating these 3 tiers, MES for your facts, Impact for your intelligence, and SAP for your accounting, is an absolute non-negotiable necessity for modern fabs.
So I'll leave you with this. Take a hard look at your own architecture. Are your systems currently fighting each other over who owns the truth, or are they properly demarcated and actually working together to explain your costs? Rebuilding your cost intelligence layer definitely isn't easy, but honestly, it is the only way to gain true control over your fab's financial future. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.